Welcome to What the Comp, the Pay Strategy Podcast, where compensation stops being confusing and starts making sense for real organizations. I'm Jennifer Loftus, National Director at Astron Solutions. And today we're talking about promotions, internal equity, and one of the most common compensation problems organizations don't see clearly until it has already grown. Because here's the truth. Many internal pay problems are not created when people are hired. They are created when people are promoted. And that surprises some organizations because hiring gets a lot of attention. New hire offers are visible. They're negotiated. They are reviewed. They are compared to the market. They often require approvals. They're under the organizational microscope. And when a new hire comes in at a higher salary than other current incumbents in the role or colleagues in the department, everyone pays attention. But promotions can be different. Promotions often feel internal, positive, earned, celebratory, less risky, less controversial. A manager wants to recognize someone. A department wants to retain someone. A role has expanded. A vacancy needs to be filled. A strong employee is ready for the next step. And because the decision feels good, organizations sometimes move quickly. But over time, promotion decisions can create serious internal equity problems. Not because the promotion was wrong, not because the employee didn't deserve the promotion, but because the pay decision attached to the promotion wasn't structured enough. And if you're in human resources or finance or managing a team, you've probably seen this happen. Someone gets promoted. They receive an increase. Maybe it's based on a percentage of their current salary. Maybe it's based on what the manager requested. Maybe it's based on what the department could afford. Maybe it's based on how much the employee was making before. Maybe it's based on urgency. Maybe it's based on fear of losing the person. And in the moment, the decision feels reasonable. But later, another employee is promoted into a similar role. Different manager, different department, different timing, different budget, different starting salary, different level of advocacy. Now the organization has two people in similar roles with different pay outcomes for reasons that are hard to explain. That is where internal equity problems begin. Not always with one bad decision, but with many reasonable decisions made without a consistent framework. So why do promotions create so many internal pay issues? Well, there's a few patterns we see consistently. The first issue, promotional increases are often based too heavily on the employee's current pay, not on market demand for the role. That sounds logical at first. Someone earns a promotion. The organization gives them a percentage increase. 5%, 8%, 10%, maybe more than 10% if the move is significant. But here's the problem. If the employee's current pay is already low, a percentage-based increase will keep them low. It moves them forward, but not necessarily to where the new role requires them to be. In that case, maybe the employee was better off quitting and then reapplying for the position as a new hire, rather than accepting the promotion. And if the employee's current pay is already high, the same percentage increase may move them very high in the new range. So two employees can receive the same promotional percentage and still land in very different places. That creates equity risk, because the question should not only be how much of an increase should this person receive, the question should also be where should this person be paid in the range for the new role. That is a different conversation, and it's the conversation many organizations miss. The second issue, promotional pay decisions often vary by manager. One manager advocates aggressively. Another manager accepts the standard guideline. One manager pushes for the highest possible increase. Another manager worries about the budget. One manager says, we have to do this to keep them. Another says, they should grow into the pay range. And over time, employees' pay outcomes can depend as much on who their manager is as on the role they are moving into. That is not sustainable, because internal equity requires more than good intentions. It requires consistent decision-making. And when promotional pay depends too much on manager advocacy, inequity grows quietly. The third issue, organizations sometimes use promotion to solve retention problems. An employee is at risk of leaving. Competitors calling. The employee feels underpaid. Manager's worried. So the organization creates a promotion, or accelerates a promotion, or stretches the role description because it feels like the fastest way to keep the person. And sometimes that may be the right decision, but it can also create downstream problems, because now the organization has used promotion as a retention tool, not a role readiness tool, not a structure-based decision, not necessarily a business need. And once employees see the promotions are a path to pay correction, the system starts to shift. Employees push for title changes. Managers use promotions to solve pay compression. Departments create inconsistent role levels. And the compensation and job architecture structures start bending under pressure. The fourth issue, promotions can create compression inside teams. A newly promoted employee receives an increase, but now they may be paid close to, or sometimes more than, employees who have been in the role longer. Or they may still be paid below their peers, especially those who are new hires, even though they are now doing similar work. Either way, pay compression can appear quickly, and employees may not know all the details, but they often sense the inconsistency. They see who was promoted. They hear what responsibilities changed. They notice titles. They compare their own growth. They ask questions. And if the organization cannot explain how promotional pay decisions are made, trust starts to erode. The fifth issue, career paths and salary structures are not always aligned. Now, this is a big one. An organization may have job levels and career architecture, or salary ranges, or career ladders, or promotion criteria. But those tools are not always connected. The career path says one thing. The salary structure says another. The manager's expectations say something else. and the employee experience becomes confusing. Because employees want to know, what does it take to move up in this organization? What will change when I move up? How is my pay determined when I move up? Will I be paid fairly compared to others in the same role? And if the organization cannot answer those questions clearly, promotions become emotional. They become negotiated. They become inconsistent. And eventually, they become a major source of internal equity risk. Here's the key point. Promotions are not just career decisions. They are compensation decisions. And if promotional pay raises are not structured, internal equity will eventually suffer. So what do you do? Because promotions should be a positive part of the employee experience. They should recognize growth. They should support retention. They should help employees see a future inside the organization. But they need structure. Starting Monday, begin reviewing how promotional increases are actually determined. Are they based on a standard percentage? The employee's current pay, the new salary range, manager request, budget availability, retention risk, market data, a combination of all those things. Because if the answer changes from case to case, you may not have a promotional pay strategy. What you have is a series of individual decisions. Starting Monday, begin asking where promoted employees land in the new salary range. Not just how much of an increase they received, where do they land after the promotion? What is their compa ratio? Are they below the range minimum? Near the range minimum? At the range midpoint? Above their peers? Below their peers? Because internal equity depends on where employees are positioned in the role and the range, not only on the size of the increase. Starting Monday, begin checking for patterns across managers and departments. Who tends to request larger promotional increases? Who tends to stay conservative? Which departments create more exceptions? Where are employees being promoted into ranges inconsistently? Where are titles changing faster than responsibilities? Because patterns tell you where the system is vulnerable. Starting Monday, begin separating promotion decisions from retention emergencies. Retention matters, but not every retention issue should become a promotion. Sometimes the answer is a market adjustment. Sometimes it's a role review. Sometimes it's a career conversation. Sometimes it's a compensation structure issue. And sometimes the promotion is appropriate. But the organization needs to know which problem it is solving before applying a solution. Because if every pay problem becomes a promotion, career architecture starts to lose meaning. Starting Monday, begin aligning career paths, job levels, and salary ranges. Employees should understand what changes when they move from one job level to the next. Managers should understand what justifies a promotion. Human resources should understand how the role fits into the structure. Finance should understand the budget impact. And leadership should understand how promotions affect internal equity over time. Because promotions are not isolated moments. They shape the entire compensation system. So here's where we land. Promotions matter. They recognize growth, they create opportunity, they help organizations retain talent. They show employees that there is a future within the organization. But promotional pay decisions also carry risk. Because when promotions are handled inconsistently, they create the very internal equity problems organizations later have to fix. And that's the uncomfortable part. The organization may believe it's rewarding growth. The manager may believe they are doing the right thing. And the employee may deserve that opportunity. And still, the pay decision may create compression, inconsistency, or equity concerns. That is why structure matters. Not to make promotions rigid, not to remove judgment, not to slow everything down, but to make sure promotional decisions are fair, explainable, and sustainable. If this is something your organization is working through, or if promotions have started creating pay questions that are harder to answer, you're not alone. We see this often. Internal equity issues do not always begin with hiring. Very often, they begin with promotions. And if it's helpful, reach out and mention the episode. We genuinely love to hear what you're seeing, where promotions are creating tension, and how your organization is trying to keep opportunity and equity aligned. Thanks for listening to What the Comp. If this made you think, please send it to someone who is reviewing promotions, internal equity, or career paths right now. Because if promotions are not managed as compensation decisions, your internal equity problems may already be growing. This is What the Comp.